You have been told for years that to lose the fat on your thighs, you must just eat less and move more. You've tried restrictive diets, endless cardio, the latest pill, and the scale either barely budges or drops while your legs feel thinner but weaker, still marbled with the soft, stubborn padding that won't tighten. That padding is not simply fat you can burn in the way the bathroom scale suggests. It is often intramuscular fat, myosteatosis, a different problem that requires a different strategy. I'll show you why and exactly how to start fixing it so your thighs become stronger, denser, and leaner from the inside out. Before we get into the mechanics and the step-by-step plan, do me a quick favor. If you want ongoing guides and detailed routines, subscribe and tap the like button so this kind of content keeps coming. I've put links to meal templates, exercise demos, and study references in the description below. Stay with me through the practical plan. This isn't about shortcuts, it's about a realistic program you can follow. When I explain this to someone in person, I start with the engine metaphor. Imagine your thigh muscle as the engine of an old car that's been idling for years. The metal is still there, but inside the cylinders, the gunk has built up. The oil is old, and the pistons don't fire with the same crispness. Myosteatosis is that internal marbling of fat through the muscle tissue. Picture Wagyu marbling, tiny streaks of fat woven among muscle fibers. It changes how the muscle contracts, how it uses fuel, and how it responds to exercise. At a cellular level, the mitochondria, the energy factories inside muscle cells, are fewer, less efficient, and the inflammatory signals are higher. That's why generic "do more cardio" advice often fails. You can burn calories elsewhere, but the muscle itself needs to be rebuilt and reactivated before that marbling recedes. Let me be clear, this is not about blame. Years of inactivity, hormonal changes, aging, or metabolic stress can all lead here. Many people I work with feel ashamed when they can't change their thighs with a diet alone. What I want you to take away first is a mindset shift. Measure change by functional gains, how much stronger you get, how fast you can walk up a hill without gasping, how your appetite stabilizes, not by the immediate number on the scale. The scale can lie. Strength gains and improved metabolic health do not always show as quick weight loss. To understand what to do, you need a short primer on the physiology, in plain language. Muscle works when fibers contract and when mitochondria turn nutrients into usable energy. When mitochondria are low or dysfunctional, glucose and lipids aren't processed efficiently. Insulin resistance can follow, and excess lipids get stored inside muscle fibers rather than burned. Inflammation invites fibrofatty tissue to replace or clutter contractile fibers. The solution must therefore have two prioritized aims: rebuild and overload the muscle to stimulate growth and mitochondrial biogenesis, and improve metabolic signaling so the muscle can use fat as fuel. That combination, mechanical stress and metabolic conditioning, is what erodes intramuscular fat over time. So, what does that look like in practice? Start with eccentric focused resistance work. Eccentric simply means the lengthening phase of a muscle contraction, the part where you lower down under control. Eccentric work generates more mechanical tension per repetition, stimulates muscle remodeling, and recruits the kind of fibers that ask the cell to build more mitochondria. An example, an eccentric focused squat where you stand under control and take 4 to 6 seconds to lower, then rise in 1 second. You can do this with body weight, holding a chair, or with a light load. Begin with 2 to 3 sessions per week focused on quality over quantity. If you've been inactive or are older, modify the movement but keep the tempo. Sit to stand from a chair, use a resistance band around the knees for support, or perform step-ups onto a low platform, slowly descending on the working leg for 4 seconds. For a healthy adult rebuilding strength, aim for 3 sets of 6 to 10 controlled eccentrics per exercise, resting 2 to 3 minutes between sets. Progress by adding a repetition, increasing range of motion, or increasing the negative tempo before adding load. Pain beyond the expected muscle soreness is a signal to back off. Consult a clinician if you have joint pathology. I'll give you concrete movement templates woven into a weekly flow so it feels actionable. Imagine a week where Monday and Thursday are eccentric resistance days. Tuesday is a brisk 30 to 45-minute walk with a few hill intervals. Friday is a short plyometric or assisted sprint session if you're cleared for higher intensity. And the other days are active recovery and mobility. On resistance days, choose 2 compound movements focusing on the thighs. Slow eccentric split squats or step-ups, a Romanian deadlift variant for the posterior chain, and a unilateral eccentric leg press alternative using a band or single leg bodyweight progression. Keep total direct thigh-focused volume moderate at first. 3 sets per exercise at the prescribed tempo, and allow 48 to 72 hours before hitting the same muscles with heavy eccentric stress again. Over time, you'll add a 3rd exercise or a heavier load as adaptation permits. When to use higher intensity conditioning like HIIT or sprints? After you have re-established baseline strength and movement quality, usually several weeks. Short, controlled sprints or cycle sprints for 5 to 10 all-out efforts with ample rest can increase metabolic demand and stimulate fat oxidation, but they're demanding on the nervous system. If you have cardiovascular risk factors, joint issues, or are new to intense effort, postpone them until you've built a foundation. Nutrition is the other pillar. You don't need a magic powder. You need a pattern that supports muscle repair and mitochondrial health. Prioritize protein at each meal to provide amino acids for muscle remodeling. Think 20 to 30 grams per meal as a reasonable target for many adults. Time your protein within a few hours after resistance sessions to help repair fibers. Manage overall carbohydrate intake in a way that supports your training. On heavy strength days, have more carbs. On recovery days, moderate them. Intermittent fasting or condensed feeding windows can help improve insulin sensitivity for some people. For instance, shifting to 2 main meals a day with a solid protein and vegetable base may reduce the constant insulin signaling that promotes lipid storage in muscle. Longer fasts, 48 to 72 hours, can trigger deeper cellular cleanup mechanisms like autophagy, but they are not for everyone. Undertake them only with medical oversight if you have metabolic disease, are on medication, or have other health concerns. During prolonged fasts, avoid heavy training and prioritize light movement. Certain nutrients and lifestyle supports help too. Vitamin D deficiency is common and can blunt muscle recovery. Consider testing and supplementing if low. Omega-3 fatty acids have anti-inflammatory properties and can aid membrane health in muscle cells. Magnesium supports sleep and muscle relaxation. These are adjuncts, not cures. Cold exposure, like a waist-deep plunge or cold shower, can modulate inflammation and increase metabolic demand. Keep sessions brief, start conservatively, and avoid plunges if you have cardiovascular instability. Sleep is non-negotiable. Deep restorative sleep optimizes hormonal balance, growth hormone release, and mitochondrial repair. Aim for consistent sleep timing and 7 to 9 hours if possible. I want to tell you about Elena because practical change happens when a person applies the plan across weeks, not in a single workout. When she first came to me, she described mornings where she could see her body getting smaller, but the clothes on her thighs still felt the same. We met in my garage gym, the concrete cool underfoot, the scent of iron and chalk, early light through the window catching the dust motes, and she asked if there was any hope. She'd been walking 2 hours a day and doing a calorie-sparse diet, and while she'd lost weight, her leg strength plummeted and she felt cold and exhausted. I explained my engine metaphor, showed her the eccentric step-up progression, and gave her a simple first week. 2 eccentric-focused sessions using support from a chair, 3 brisk walks with 2 5-minute hill intervals across the week, and a consolidated feeding pattern, 2 protein-forward meals, and an adequate fat intake to sustain energy. The first session, she felt awkward. The muscles fired differently. She was sore in places that hadn't been sore in years. We both laughed at the unfamiliar tremble as she lowered on a single slow leg and rose in one. "It's like finding the engine parts again," she said afterward, wiping her brow. The second week she did a bit more volume, and by week 4 she reported feeling warmer at rest and more confident climbing stairs without grabbing the rail. She wasn't dramatically lighter on the scale, but she was stronger, and her clothes fit differently. That's the early win. Reversing functional loss precedes cosmetic change. There are practical cues for forms I always teach. For an eccentric split squat, position your front foot firmly. Keep your knee aligned over the second toe. Hinge slightly at the hips and take 4 to 6 seconds to lower until the back knee gently approaches the floor. Explode or rise in 1 smooth second. Keep your chest tall. Don't rush the negative. For step-ups with an eccentric focus, step up normally, and then take 5 seconds to lower the trailing leg, focusing on the working limb controlling the descent. For walking lunges, emphasize the controlled descent of each rep rather than rapid stepping. A band around the thighs can help maintain knee tracking if you tend to cave. When I cue breathing, I tell people to exhale during the hard, slow lowering to maintain intra-abdominal support. A common question: how long until you see a difference? Real change in intramuscular fat and mitochondrial density takes months, not days. Many of the structural improvements, neuromuscular control, coordination, and initial strength show up within 4 to 8 weeks. Deeper metabolic remodeling and visible tissue recomp is often measured in months to a year, depending on starting point, hormones, and consistency. That's why I emphasize patience. Build reliable habits, track strength metrics, e.g., slow descent time, number of clean reps at a given tempo, loaded step-up height, and measure subjective improvements like reduced breathlessness on inclines, steadier appetite, and daily energy. Safety and adaptation matter throughout. If you have a history of knee pain, perform movements in the pain-free range. Prioritize joint-friendly exercises like controlled box step-ups and partial range eccentrics, and consider seeing a physiotherapist. For older or frailer adults, reduce eccentric tempo and use assistance straight away, a chair, a box, or a partner. And always consult a physician before starting prolonged fasts, intense cold exposure, or a sprint program if you have cardiovascular disease, diabetes on medication, or uncontrolled hypertension. There is also the psychological component.
You will be tempted to switch programs when the scale isn't moving. Anchor to the process. Log your strength sessions, not just your meals. Celebrate a heavier resistance band, a deeper range in a split squat, an extra hill minute on a walk.
Reframe success from thigh fat gone in 2 weeks to muscle that functions like an engine again. If you find motivation waning, pair workouts with sensory cues. Outdoor hill walks with morning air and birdsong. Slow eccentrics in front of a mirror with music that steadies your breath. Post-workout protein that tastes like care rather than punishment. Concretely, the next 7 days I would have you do this. 2 eccentric resistance sessions focusing on controlled lowering and progressive overload. 3 walks with at least 1 containing intentional inclines. 1 light mobility or yoga session focusing on hip flexor and hamstring length. And aim to consolidate your eating into 2 main protein-forward meals to see if hunger and energy stabilize. Supplement sensibly with vitamin D if you are deficient, omega-3s for anti-inflammatory support, and magnesium for sleep. Try 1 brief cold exposure, like a cool shower or a waist-deep plunge of under 2 minutes, only if you are otherwise healthy. If you're considering a 48-hour fast, book that with a medical check if you're on medication. When Elena returned after 12 weeks, her legs felt different to touch, firmer, and she could climb her steep backyard steps without stopping. She told me she finally understood that the mirror had been lying to her. Internal changes were underway, and the outward shape would follow in time. She wasn't done, but she had momentum. That momentum is the crux. Small, repeatable actions that target both muscle structure and metabolic health compound into real remodeling. You may be thinking about equipment or space. You do not need a gym. Use a sturdy chair, a stair, a backpack with books for progressive load, and resistance bands. Hill walking can be done in your neighborhood or on a treadmill with incline. Step-ups use any stable platform. When you add load, do so conservatively. The goal is to signal to the muscle to rebuild, not to wreck the nervous system. I've laid out why intramuscular fat persists, how eccentric training and metabolic strategies address the root causes, and a practical way to begin. The most important commitment is consistency with patience. You may not see the cosmetic change in a weekend or a month, but your engine will start running cleaner if you follow the plan. Rebuild the muscle with eccentric overload, condition the metabolism with targeted walking and staged intensity, support recovery with sleep and nutrients, and, when appropriate, use fasting and cold exposure as adjuncts under supervision. When you stand up for your first controlled eccentric session, notice the small sensory details, the creak of the chair beneath you, the steadying of breath as you count the slow descent, the warmth that follows as circulation increases. That specificity anchors behavior. If you keep showing up for those precise moments of stress and repair, months from now you will notice less wobble in everyday movements, more confidence on inclines, and a different baseline of strength that tells a better story than a number on a scale. We have only just scratched the surface of progressions, meal templates, and demo-rich cues I'll share next. If you want the follow-up with full exercise videos, detailed meal examples, and a week-by-week progression you can follow, I'll put those resources in the description and in the next guide. For now, start with 1 deliberate eccentric session this week, a controlled walk with hills, and 1 change in your eating pattern toward 2 protein-focused meals. Small, concentrated actions build the engine back up. Small, concentrated actions build the engine back up. Now for the practical scaffolding, how to turn those intentions into a sustainable, progressive 12-week arc that prioritizes eccentric overload without overreaching the nervous system, while also stabilizing energy through simpler meal structure.
Principles that guide every session. Favor slow, controlled lowering. The eccentric phase should feel deliberate. Count the descent, let the muscle lengthen under tension. That signal, time under tension, is the stimulus for remodeling. Prioritize form over load. If increasing weight breaks the descent tempo or creates uncontrolled movement, regress the load or range. The goal is stimulus with quality. Keep frequency moderate. 2 deliberately eccentric resistance sessions per week is enough to start remodeling without impairing recovery for most people. Add accessory work that supports the posterior chain and single leg strength. Build walking as conditioning, not punishment. Hill walks are metabolic and functional conditioning. They also reinforce the muscle patterns stressed by eccentric work. Track function, not just aesthetics. Log strength markers, stair climbs, sit-to-stand times, and how the legs feel in daily tasks. A simple 12-week progression overview. Weeks 1 through 4, foundation. Eccentric resistance, twice weekly. 3 sets of 6 to 8 slow eccentrics per major movement. Tempo, roughly 3 to 4 seconds down, controlled return. Exercises, box squat to a slow sit, split squat lowering to 3 to 4 seconds per rep, Romanian deadlift with light load and slow descent. Use a load that allows perfect control. Walks, 3 sessions weekly. 2 flat 25 to 35 minute brisk walks, 1 20 to 30 minute hill walk with 4 to 6 hill minutes total, can be interval on a treadmill. Mobility or yoga, 1 session per week. Short focus on hip flexors, hamstrings, and ankle mobility. Nutrition. Aim for 2 protein-forward meals that include complete proteins and vegetables. Total daily protein target, roughly 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. Adjust per appetite and tolerance. Hydrate and prioritize sleep.
Braced breathing. Inhale before the descent. Exhale through the return, or use a steady breath cadence that maintains core tension. Controlled contact. When lowering to a box or step, touch deliberately, not collapsing into it, so the muscle is still loaded on contact. Progress considerations and regressions. Joint pain versus muscle soreness. Expect soreness. Sharp joint pain or persistent instability requires regression and possible medical review. Replace deep squats with partial range or box-supported variations if knees are problematic. Nervous system fatigue. If sleep, mood, or resting heart rate worsen, reduce eccentric tempo or drop a session for a week. Quality over stubbornness. Plateaus. When strength stalls, rotate exercises, e.g., swap split squats for step-ups. Increase protein intake slightly and ensure recovery metrics are addressed first. Nutrition. Practical protein-forward templates. Guiding idea. Make 2 meals the anchors. Each should contain 30 to 45 grams of protein for many adults, aiming to stimulate muscle protein synthesis across fewer meals. Adjust by body size and appetite. Example Day A, animal protein forward. Meal 1, late morning. 3 eggs scrambled with spinach, plus 150 grams Greek yogurt with berries and a tablespoon of seed mix. Snack optional, handful of nuts or a small protein shake post-walk. Meal 2, early evening, 150 to 200 grams roasted chicken or salmon, sweet potato, large salad or sautéed greens. Night, cottage cheese or kefir if hungry. Example Day B, plant inclusive. Meal 1, tofu scramble or lentil hash with quinoa, avocado, and leafy greens, plus a side of Greek yogurt if tolerated. Meal 2, tempeh or tofu stir-fry with mixed vegetables and a base of buckwheat or brown rice.
Include olive oil and a salad. Add in a whey, pea, or blend protein supplement if hitting protein targets is difficult. Supplements to consider, with precautions. Vitamin D if deficient. Get a baseline level and consult a clinician for dosing. Omega-3, EPA, DHA for basic anti-inflammatory support at modest dosing. Creatine monohydrate can be a practical adjunct to strength training for adults of many ages. 3 to 5 grams daily is common unless contraindicated. Consult with a healthcare provider if you have kidney concerns or are on specific medications. Magnesium in the evening may support sleep for some individuals. Always check interactions and medical conditions with a clinician. Recovery, sleep, and stress. Sleep is the chief recovery tool. Aim for consistent sleep windows and prioritize 7 to 9 hours for most adults. When sleep is fragmented, reduce training intensity. Stress management. Brief breathing practices, short walks outdoors, and unstructured movement protect recovery hormones and appetite regulation. Alcohol. Moderate or avoid on heavy training days. It impairs recovery and sleep quality. Tracking progress sensibly. Strength logs. Record exercise, load, sets, reps, and tempo.
The number one objective metric is the amount of controlled load you can handle over time. Functional tests monthly. Timed sit to stand, e.g., 10 reps, stair climb time, or a simple 6-minute walk. Subjective markers. Ease of climbing stairs without pause, less wobble during single-leg stance, and improved confidence stepping onto curbs. These are meaningful outcomes. Photographs can be useful, but pair them with performance markers to avoid fixation on small cosmetic changes. Troubleshooting common scenarios. If scale is stubborn, refocus on strength metrics and functional gains. Intramuscular fat and changes in composition lag behind neuromuscular improvements. If you're fatigued for days, reduce eccentric tempo, lower frequency to one focused session plus mobility, and reassess sleep and stress. If motivation wanes, anchor a workout to a sensory cue as before. Morning coffee after a brisk hill, a playlist tied to tempo, or a favorite spot in the neighborhood that marks the end of the walk. Expectations and timelines. Physiological change is incremental. Neural efficiency and coordination improve in weeks. Muscle remodeling and measurable shifts in intramuscular composition take months. That's why the plan intentionally emphasizes consistency and progressive quality stress rather than dramatic short-term calorific restriction or excessive aerobic volume. Elena's 12-week return was a real example of that trajectory. A firmer leg, better stair confidence, and a new baseline for everyday movement. Your timeline will vary, but the template above is designed to give you steady, measurable signals of progress. When you prepare for your first controlled eccentric session, set 2 simple goals. Perform each descent with intention and log 1 objective number, either the load you used or the time under tension. That small record becomes the seed of momentum. Over weeks, those increments add up into durable, functional change. Stronger muscles, less daily wobble, and movement that feels like it serves you rather than limits you. If you want, start today with a single deliberate eccentric set. A slow box sit to stand, 3 repetitions with a 4-second descent. Notice the breath, the creak of the chair, the warmth in your thighs afterward. Those tiny moments are how the engine learns to run again.